Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Boston Yoga Union, this is Wisdom of the Sages, the daily yoga podcast with your host Raghunath and supreme lead educator of the Bhakti Center in New York City, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show. We are here with, let's see, how many people we got here? 72 people on Zoom, as well as our live group here. And yeah, we are just coming off of, Sandy, you got to shut that down. We got some music coming in the background.
That'd be mine. It's mine.
Okay.
Okay, we're good.
Okay. We have, anyway, we're just coming off this, I'm just coming off this Joe Rogan thing, which was really, I didn't realize how many people listen to that thing. Like people in my neighborhood, kids at school, my kids, my neighbors, my nephews and nieces are contacting me. It was such a big overwhelming thing. And I'm such like a self-critic. I'm just like, why did I say that? Why did I say that? I should have said this. And so I appreciate everybody's encouragement, but I've been beating myself up.
No, Raghu, you did great. And I just wanted to congratulate you. I thought you did a really nice job. And I want to share that, I was thinking, I'm trying to think still. Like millions of people watch or listen to that show, literally millions, right? Like, I don't know if 4 or 8 or 10 million people actually hear it. And I'm trying to think of when in history has there been a presentation of, Bhagavad-Gita philosophy, Bhakti philosophy, like in one shot where you reach that many people? I can't think of any. I think you may have made a little Bhakti history there.
Well, I want to thank everybody on Zoom because by reading the Bhagavatam every day, people ask me how do you prepare for that? It's the same way I prepare for everything, which is I never prepare. And I never prepare and I always prepare, meaning I just, on my downtime, like I'm driving in the car, I'll listen to, I was listening to the Krishna book here. I drove here from Rhode Island this morning and I listened to Krishna book and I listened to prayers to Krishna of the demigods. And they're incredibly beautiful. Yeah. And their description, they're philosophical. And what you do on your downtime with your hearing is what comes out of your mouth when you're talking. And so my theory is if I always put some type of information in that's going to bring me higher or bring me up or connect me with spirit, then on my downtime when I'm talking, when I'm just being so-called normal, it's a new type of normal. That's what's coming out of my mouth. And so I really think it's about associating with teachers, wisdom literature, etc. And therefore, I got a little nervous. Truthfully, I don't usually get so nervous, but I was super nervous. And my wife was really good. She just talked me down. She just said, listen, I know you're freaking out. I broke out with a cold sore. That's how I think my immune system was wrecked. She said, you got to sit here and channel Raghunath Swami. What would Raghunath Swami do?
There you go.
And she goes, he would start to, instead of going in leading with your ego and what you're going to tell him, Raghunath Swami would appreciate the person. So I went in there and tried to appreciate him. And I think it sort of changed the mood a little bit. Mm-hmm. And also I realized there's nothing I'm going to write at this point to prepare for anything. All I'm going to do is sit and chant good japa. So I sat there and just outside of my hotel and just chanted.
Well, I think it worked, Raghu. I think, I think the conversation was a good conversation, the back and forth. And I think that just in a very natural way, you managed to share your distilling of all that you've learned and practiced in a way that people could understand it. And then the strength of that, is its own. It's like how that will connect with people, how people appreciate it, that's up to where they're at. But I think you did your job well, I think. And I'm just sharing my appreciation for you.
Thanks. Because truthfully,
Well done.
Kaustubha, when people say something nice or say something critical, it's all a big, it's a whatever. You can't. Sometimes one person could say something critical, it can throw you right off. But there's people, especially if you read the YouTube thing, there's people like, this guy's, ugly bald head, like really, really rude. Like, why would Joe invite this? Like, some of the stuff is just like rude. It's like junior high school, like criticisms. And then there's some other criticisms, and then there's some nice things. But when Kaustubha called me after the show, he was so happy that I felt like, because Kaustubha was so happy, I feel it was a success. So,
well, you made me happy. At least
you
did that. But I think you did a lot more.
But I will say, when you're presenting it to like, for example, I'm about to give a yoga workshop in Boston, and the first hour and a half is just talking, and I'll just talk about, stories and pastimes and philosophy. I know who's coming in the door. I know what I'm dealing with. But that Joe Rogan podcast was such a broad audience. You have Democrats, Republicans, people who love guns, people who hate guns, people who believe in UFOs, people who are scientists. It's like, how are you supposed to like cover all these bases and not be sort of like tar and feathered and run out of town?
But the way that you did it, I think, was that you just spoke to him, and I think, in other words, as a viewer, I wasn't picking up that you're trying to appeal to all these different audiences. I was just watching you two speak.
Oh, that's cool.
And I think he represents all those things in a sense. So by speaking to him and trying to make it understandable for him, it was understandable for all his audience.
Yeah. Thank you. And, I also felt like there were certain things I didn't want to dig my heels in with, like the hunting thing. He got into a whole thing about hunting. I felt like, am I going to have this age-old debate of veganism versus animal? And I felt like that he was not going to walk. He's heard all that.
Right.
That wasn't going to do it. And so I just, instead of digging my heels in with one point, just, accept the person for everybody's on their own path, and not try to be antagonists. And it was, I don't know. I think with you yourself, when you've been doing this for a long time, and how to explain the esoteric things to people who, he was actually very deep in a lot of his thoughts and a lot of his ideas.
He was.
But it's always a challenge. Like, well, how do you explain it to your mom? How do you explain what you're into to your best friend who thinks you might be crazy? Sometimes it works. Sometimes your best friend just like, this is great. I can't believe we're both into this cool thing. And sometimes they're like, I think our friendship is over.
When I first got into Bhakti, I remember having this, I was living in the old Williamsburg, Brooklyn,
Right.
And I remember sitting there in my apartment, just kind of almost like buzzing with just like, it's almost like, I don't know if it's saying it like this, like I found it finally or something, but it's just like I'm being charged by this stuff, and I remember in that immature state of mine thinking like, I just got to tell everybody about this, and they're just going to accept it. Like, let me call my friend. Let me, they're just going. I know it now, and as soon as I explain it to them, they're going to
wait till I tell my family. They're going to be so psyched. That's what I thought.
Yeah,
How
but then the first person you go and you try to explain to, they can't understand it at all, because we're all coming from these different perspectives, and either our mind or even like the God within the heart is going to allow us to understand or not, depending on our desires and so many things. But I was impressed watching you. Like I've seen some of Joe Rogan stuff. I'm not that up to date with it, but I've tuned in on some of his clips and all that. And, what I see from him is, it seems like from what I pick up, he's into a couple of things that we're definitely not into, right? Like meat eating and what was the other one?
Hunting.
Yeah, hunting, and there's something else I forget. And he's into drugs, right? He's like into doing drugs. Kind of like everything that your
Yeah,
original
truthfully, I think
bands.
his drugs though are to
He's got an
assist
idea.
him on a spiritual path.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
But my point is, those are kind of the things that, like, for instance, as devotees, we restrict ourselves from when we have our reasons for that. And yourself, like, those are kind of what your original band was built on. Was
Right.
like being against drugs and being against eating meat.
Mm.
But you were there talking with him in a non-judgmental way, in a non-conflicting way, just like two friends exploring ideas together. And I was so impressed that, like, for instance, this idea that food, when cooked, the consciousness that food is cooked with, that affects the person that eats the food.
You
Now,
know
that's
what's-
something. Why should anyone accept that?
Somebody wrote that. Somebody wrote a comment, and it says, "As soon as Capo said the missing ingredient is love, I turned the whole thing off." But that was just some hardcore kid hater.
Yeah, so whatever. But the point is, but Joe Rogan didn't turn it off. He got right into that point, and he started taking it very seriously. And I believe what he asked you was, do you think it's that we just become so dull that we can't understand it? You know, and you spoke with conviction on that point, and you see, when you speak with conviction, like true conviction.
I mean, that's true conviction. I'm convinced that when you eat just prasad, it affects your mind. And if you have a strict diet of that, and then you go off it, you'll feel like you feel off base.
Yeah.
Like,
and so I get it. And so my point is that when a person speaks with true conviction, deep, real, genuine conviction, not faked conviction, not artificial conviction, but like genuine conviction, it's actually as, or sometimes even more influential than like a well-designed argument.
Right.
You know, people can feel your conviction. And I think he felt you. He asked you, like, you know, I forget exactly what he said, but you kind of said, like, no, I feel it, you know, like I know it when I do it. And I think he took that seriously.
Right.
Like it just conveyed to him, okay, this is something genuine. This is something real. And then he engaged with that idea in a respectful way. You know, what do you think?
How about when I said the classic Hare Krishna fanatical answer of, "Oh, Soma? Yeah, they drink it on the moon." I listened back to that. I was like, what was I? He's like, "Oh, they drink it on the moon."
The moon, do they? Okay. Everybody there is drinking it. Well, any case, beyond all that, we got a bit of a spike, you know?
Oh my God. It's still going. If you look at my Instagram account, it's like 3 seconds. I get followers like every 4 seconds. I've got like 1,200 more followers on Instagram.
Yeah. And we got about the same amount on YouTube. And then we don't know how many more will be tuning in on the other platforms. So there's a big bump.
Yeah. YouTube, by the way, for YouTube followers, even with Joe Rogan, it's sort of like, wow, that's a lot. There's like 600,000 people on YouTube, but on the actual podcast itself is at least that much more.
Right. So probably like we get more listeners on our podcast platforms than we do on YouTube. And it's likely that he does too. So like if 1 million or 2, like say he's got, say 2 million, how many have watched? Do you know how many have watched it so far? Probably like a million or something. I don't know. Okay. But in any case, say 2 million people watch it on YouTube. You probably got more than that on the other podcast platforms. So like I said, I can't think of a presentation of Bhagavad-Gita philosophy or Bhakti philosophy to a larger audience, like in one shot. I'm trying to think. In history, has that happened? Do we know?
I feel like I dropped the ball on the Ganesh thing. Who's Ganesh? He's a higher being. As a devotee, you say these things that like you expect everyone just like, oh, okay, it's a higher being. I don't know.
In any case, I think you did great. But my point is, I think because we'll probably have a lot of new listeners on this particular, this will be the first one that all these people get their first subscription based,
right. It'll pop up for them.
It'll pop up for them. So maybe we need a little, just go back a little bit to what the Bhagavatam is, a little backstory, a little what the Bhagavatam is. And
okay, great.
Before we jump into our thing.
And for all those who are joining us new and live, this is what we do. We have we do this every day, generally at 5 a.m. I travel a lot, so sometimes we have to mix it up. And then I send out a message on Telegram, which is it's like WhatsApp, or it's like a chat app. And we also have a live group on Zoom that joins us, so you can see each other and interact and wink at people.
Yeah, we got 75 right now tuned in.
We get 75. And then sometimes when I'm around, because I travel, some people join me. They find out about the show and they join me live, like this crew over here. Okay.
Those are regular Zoomers I'm seeing over there.
They're regular Zoomers, and we got one. And if you're not listening, we call you the other. Those are the ones who listen, but they never let their identity be known. There's so many others. It's unbelievable. I'm meeting others all the time. Sadie had a whole thing. What's your story, Sadie, again?
I grew up Catholic.
I don't want your whole bio here. I just want to.
Which story?
All right. How did you get to be the other?
Oh, Sandy told me about it.
Oh, Sandy Clemmer.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I started from the very first episode, and I've listened.
Oh,
to
really?
all of them.
We
Okay.
can't hear Raghu.
Okay, you can't hear. Okay, Sandy's just one of the others here.
No, see.
I mean, Sadie's one of the others. She was preached to by Sandy. That's when you preach to your best friend about, I found something great. And your best friend is like, awesome, I'm in. And sometimes it doesn't happen that easy.
Shout out to Danielle Benson.
Shout out to Danielle from Boston, who's in Bali right now. She dragged Liz into this. We're just dragging people to the Bhagavatam. It's incredible. People dragging their wives, their husbands, their kids. Okay, let's start with this. We always start with these invocation prayers, and then Kaustubha is going to give a little backstory of where we're at. So It starts like this. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narotamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudiraye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of our conquest, one should offer obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naistaki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart will become completely eradicated, and loving service to the Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, will be established as an irrevocable fact. Om Agyanatamarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chaksurun Mudatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. All right. So anybody on Zoom, if you got any questions, you just write them on in.
By the way, it was 685,000.
685,000 views up to now. On
YouTube. Okay. So then that means you probably got at least the same amount. So you're like well over 1 million,
Yeah.
Maybe 1.5 million, 2 million, who knows?
Another cool thing is me and Kaustubha were appreciating how, the opportunity could have come last year before it was a podcast. It was almost like everything happened at a perfect time. You couldn't have aligned the stars better, like how it could have happened. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. If it would have happened a few weeks earlier, even, it was 3 weeks into our podcast that you got that invitation. It's perfect.
It was unbelievable. I know. We were saying that in India when Kaustubha was with me when Joe texted me. I was like, this is unbelievable. If we got this 3 weeks earlier, it wouldn't even be a podcast.
So in other words, something to connect people to, right?
Right.
And it was, anyway, we were so happy that, you got a chance to mention the podcast a little bit, but it's a 3-hour thing. So like a lot of people, may, kind of miss it almost or something like that. But they included that link for Wisdom of the Sages right there in the, 2-sentence description of the thing. So like that was perfect,
That was so cool.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure if they were going to put that in at all.
Yeah.
Did you hear at the show when he said, what's your phone cover?
Oh, hey, and so you got to give credit to Damodar Priya there. I just saw Damodar Priya. Where is she?
She gave me the phone cover, and Joe called it out. It was very hard. I just wanted to share with everybody. I had a whole list of things I wanted to say, and I wanted to start with Mangalacharanam Om Jnana Timirandasya. And it was just like, I couldn't, it was hard to hold that conversation. I wanted to get into Wisdom of the Sages. I wanted to get into Radhanath Swami's book. I wanted to get into, anyway.
But the fact that they put that link there, you know, whatever you weren't able to share about the podcast there, just that link, you know, was a big deal.
Okay. All right. So we want to catch us up, give us a little cliff notes.
So again, you know, we likely have a lot of new listeners that are just tuning in that came over from Joe Rogan. And of course, it's always good to do a little review. But just to understand, you know, a lot, like you spoke a lot about the Bhagavad-Gita on Joe Rogan's show.
I attempted to. I think I also dropped the ball with that, but
you did a lot. But there's another text called the Srimad Bhagavatam, and that's the text that, we talk a lot of Bhagavad-Gita here, but especially what we're reading from is a book. It's an 18,000 verse book called the Srimad Bhagavatam.
18,000 verses.
18,000 verses.
They're like beautiful rhyming prose.
Yeah,
it's poetry. Unbelievable.
It's poetry, but it's poetry that's just infused with, laden with all kind of deep spiritual truths, you know, about life. And but if I want to share just a few thoughts that are really significant about the Srimad Bhagavatam, sometimes it's also called the Bhagavad Purana, is that all of the Eastern philosophy, it's stemming out of the works of one person named Vyasa or Vyasadeva. And so he wrote the books called the Four Vedas, and he wrote the books called the Upanishads, and he wrote the Mahabharata, which includes the Bhagavad-Gita. And then he wrote a collection of, we mentioned that this—
What a bio Vyasadeva.
We haven't even finished. He wrote the Vedanta Sutra, which summarized everything. And he wrote the Puranas, which are full of the stories. Like, these books that he wrote are the basis of all the yoga philosophy, of all the Hindu, Indian culture, of it's just, the influence is massive. And Buddhism stems out of that. And Sikhism stems out of that. And all the Eastern philosophy, you know, it's not only owes a debt to Vyasadeva's works, but practically they grow off of them. But the thing is, he was writing these books for people on different levels of spiritual consciousness. People that are materialistic but want to be good and want the good things in materialistic life. People that have recognized that the material world is troublesome and problematic and want to transcend it and find freedom or moksha or peace. And then, but ultimately he wanted to, his idea was always that it would lead further and further into what is called bhakti, which means that one connects with the divine out of nothing but pure love. Now, I don't want the things of this world. I don't even want to escape the pains of this world. I want to achieve a consciousness of pure divine love. And that is, it starts to get revealed in the Bhagavad Gita, but it's in great depth. It's outlined in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And so he begins the Bhagavatam by sages gathered in the forest, trying to make sense of all this literature, turning to one sage amongst them and saying, hey, you know what? Among us, you're the most realized and the most pure. Could you share with us what's most important out of all of this yoga teachings? Can you boil it down for us and show us through that how we can find what in the term used as Atma Supersiddhiti, complete satisfaction of the soul? How do we find that in life? And that's what the Bhagavatam is meant to lay out. And we're early in the Bhagavatam right now. There's 12 cantos, you know, each with many, many chapters. And we're in the 6th chapter of the 1st canto. And it's a really interesting passage because it shows Vyasadeva, the author of it all, being instructed by his guru named Narada to, hey, you've written all this literature, but you still don't feel quite right. The reason is because you haven't been direct enough. You got to bring people to that pure divine love message more directly. And so he goes back and he revises the Srimad Bhagavatam, and that's what we're reading now. But in that conversation that he was having, his guru Narada shared with him that because I had the opportunity, when I was in my previous life, he gives his past life regression. In my previous life, I was a simple little boy. I was a good boy, but you know, I was kind of like respectful and well behaved. And I was the son of a single mother. And we kind of ran a little, kind of like an inn or something like that, some kind of place where people would stay. And these great sages, these great bhakti yogis, they visited there and they stayed for 4 months. And in that time, even though I was a young boy, because I was receptive to what they had to share, and they instructed me in all the confidential teachings of bhakti yoga. And then he describes shortly after they left, his mother died. He was just a boy, but he began to wander through the forest and doing the meditation that they taught him. And now we're reading about the effects of that meditation, of the experience that he had. And ultimately he says that he had a vision of the divine, of God, of Lord Vishnu. And but then that vision disappeared, and he was told that he wouldn't have that vision again in this life, but just by having that vision once, it made the rest of his life, he was always eager to see it again. And that kind of pure desire in him kind of led to his next birth, which was as Narada. And Narada is a famous character in all the yoga teachings and all these books about he's like a pure bhakti yogi who has the freedom to travel at will throughout the different planets and universes, and his whole thing is bhakti. His whole thing is like kind of this deep level of spiritual yogic devotion.
He has nothing. He wanders. He just carries this musical instrument and sings and chants.
Yeah.
Wherever he goes,
in a state of complete spiritual bliss.
Yes.
That was the goal that he achieved through his yoga practice. And so we'll be reading about that today. We'll be picking up around there.
All right. So all right.
Are you going to be able to read, or should I do the reading today?
I can try it, and let's see
Okay.
if it doesn't work. We're on Canto 1, Chapter 6, verse 32.
31, I believe.
31.
And we can mention that there's a website. To buy the Bhagavatam is
It's a big commitment.
Well, it costs about $275 or something, because it's this big collection of books. But it is online if people want to follow along on Vedabase. I think if you just Google Vedabase, you'll find it. And then you'll find a whole collection of books, among them the Srimad Bhagavatam.
Yeah, or I think it's called SB. It's like assuming that you know the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, so text 31. Since then, by the grace of the Almighty Vishnu, I travel everywhere without restriction, both in transcendental world and in the 3 divisions of the material world. This is because I am fixed in unbroken devotional service of the Lord. A lot of people who study yoga, they know this mantra, the Gayatri mantra, which Om Bhur-Bhuvah Swa. These talk about the 3 Bhur-Bhuvah Swa is the 3 levels of the material world. Some are actual heavens. Heavens, and if this is sort of hard to understand, you just got to look at it as even in this world, you have heavenly places and you have horrible places. But the Vedas say it's not just this world, because this world, this earthly plane, is good and bad. I think I was saying this in the podcast. There's good and bad going on in this world, but then there's actually dimensions of incredible material pleasure, and there's also places of incredible material pain. And none of these places, be it set middle, higher, or lower, are permanent places. There's places where you do time, so to speak, learn some lessons, and take birth again. I think Joe's point, he was bringing up a philosophy. It wasn't Vedic philosophy. It was, I don't know if it was some person's philosophy or one of the Gracies' philosophy of you take birth and you live your same life again and again and again until you get everything right. You made a bad decision. You should have went left. You went right. You should have ate fruit. You ate meat. You should have done this. You've done that. And you got to relive that life till you make every choice right. The Vedic thing isn't exactly like that, but it is, you have to take birth again. So when we have a great life, that's nice. But a lot of times when we have a great life, you can use your greatness, your good fortune, your success, your beauty, your charm, your strength, your intelligence to manipulate people, to be cruel to people, to be oblivious to other people's pain. And therefore, you're taking that good karma and doing bad acts. And because of that, it's not like be it evil or without any judgment, there is a reaction for that activity, right? If there's a pizza and there's 5 of us here want some pizza and I eat all of the pizza, they get no pizza and I get indigestion. So it's not a judgment statement. It's just the fact is they got no pizza. I can't digest my food. It's just what happens. And so that's okay. So we learn lessons in this birth and death game. And that's sort of like, and it's sort of compared to like a prison. And in a prison, you have an opportunity to get out on good behavior, or you have an opportunity to become a bigger criminal while you're in the prison house. Some criminals go in there and they get added sentences on for ill behavior. So this is sort of what's going on in the soul's journey of samsara, or birth and death. And we're actually here not to try to like, how can I enjoy life? We're actually here to try to grow in our life. How do we evolve in our life? And in Bhakti, they say the highest welfare work for yourself is to find spiritual connection. And when you find spiritual connection, you can actually offer some substantial love and assistance and help and care for others. I don't even know how I got started talking about that, but yeah. Okay, we talk about the 3 planetary systems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's shown here that he says that he has the freedom to travel without restriction. You know, we're actually so restricted, right?
I'm restricted. My car can only go so fast.
Yeah. And even then it's like, you know, you can't cross the water, you can't cross an ocean in your car. You can't.
No, you can't drive in the water with my car. It's not good for that.
And even if we had a private jet, you know, we can't like leave this planet. And, you know, he's completely unrestricted. And then it says, why? Because I'm fixed in unbroken bhakti. Because this devotional connection to the divine is unbroken. I have no interest in material things. And it's when I get interested in material things that I get restricted.
It's interesting because a lot of the yogic cities, if you study them, they're all about finding, how can I get these mystical things? It's not even on the menu for most people doing yoga. I'm here at Boston Yoga Union. I know there's like a level 2, 3 class, a power flow class, a gentle beginners class. There's no like how to levitate class, or there's no how to read minds class. But in classical yoga study, there are groups of yogis who just want to learn mystical perfections. And it's not relevant. It's not even in the conversation or on the menu, so to speak. But Narada says, in my connection with Bhakti, I have all these mystic powers anyway. I'm not even asking for them. And sometimes you meet people, I was talking to Leela the other day, and we were talking about some mystics that we know. And sometimes the mystics do some pujas for you, and they do some worship of some devas or gods to counteract some malefic planet. And she says, you can pay them whatever. It's their business. It's like you're dealing with some 2 carpenters, and one guy gives you the general contractor says, okay, I'll redo your bathroom for $14,000. Another guy says, I'll do it for 10. It's like that with mystics as well. They learn these things almost as a business or a profession. It's not like it's an evil profession. It's a good profession, but it deals with the whole metaphysical side of the universe that we're just so shut off to. But in Bhakti Yoga, we're not going out to get mystic perfections, but for a person who's actually connected, they have them without wanting them. It just comes. It just comes with the package. It's the deluxe premium package, complete with all mystic powers.
So Narada got them. And, if we go back to the beginning of this chapter, Vyasa is asking Narada, like, how did you take this birth? And how did you get this body? And how can you remember your previous life? And so he's kind of describing all that now.
Okay. Text 32. And thus I travel constantly, singing the transcendental messages of the glories of the Lord, vibrating this instrument called the Veena. which is charged with transcendental sound and which was given to me by Lord Krishna. Text 33. The Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, whose glories and activities are pleasing to hear, at once appears on the seat of my heart as if called for. As soon as I begin to chant his activities, his holy activities.
Wow.
Hmm.
There's your kind of your perfection of meditation described right there. In other words, he's saying at will, I can meditate and feel God sitting in my heart. And in that state, feel complete satisfaction. As if I were just calling for him as a person. You know, the previous verse says, I just spend all my time kind of glorifying, you know, my connection to Krishna. And, you know, that you'll find in the Bhagavad-Gita, you know, Satatam Kirti Yanto Mam, that the great souls, that the great yogis, that this is how this is their pleasure in life, you know. And he's saying, it's given me the opportunity that now it's almost like at will, it's almost like a special power, but it's almost like I call the one that I love and I feel their presence. And simply through the name, I can chant that name and I'm fully connected, not even externally, but internally within my own heart.
And this is also the power of the mantras, this concept of Shabda Brahman, which is spiritual sound. And people say, well, why can't I just chant couch, couch, couch? There's different things that if you chant them, nothing will happen. Just like in the same way, if you put water if you put iron in fire, that iron becomes just like fire. Why does it become that? I don't know why it does. It's just, that's what happens when that element of iron gets placed in fire. If I take the iron out and I put it into a big pile of hay, that hay will light on fire. If you put dirt in that fire, nothing will happen to that dirt. It won't ignite. Why? It's just the nature of that. So the nature of these mantras are, some of them will actually become transcendental. It's not random. It's not capricious. We're not picking any whimsical mantra. It is particular sounds become, when chanted appropriately, they start to take on the spiritual power. And that's why saints and sages use mantras as sound and put them out of their mouth and in their ears on a regular basis. And it has an effect of spirit. And it can't even be explained necessarily why these particular sounds, but it has to do with the intention of the chanter as well as the particular mantras as well. In Bhakti, it's the heart of the chanter, why we're doing it. Would you like to comment on that?
Well, yeah, or that it's that the mantra itself is that you use the term Shabda Brahma, which means spiritual sound. So this is how Bhakti-yoga is practiced, is the idea is that there are certain elements that are spiritually powerful. And here we're talking about mantra. And then you're talking about like the heart of the person that's chanting it. The point is that the sound itself is powerful, but how are we capable of absorbing its power, or are we dull to it? Does it not penetrate us? And well, what prevents it from penetrating into us? You know, and that has to do with who we are in our character. If I'm cruel, it's not going to penetrate so deep into me. If I'm lazy, it's not going to penetrate so deep into me. If I'm covered by these lower modes of nature, the darker modes of nature, if I'm driven by material desire, it's not going to penetrate as deeply into me. So the yogis, they practice trying to free themselves of their lower nature. And as they do, they're able to absorb their mind deeply into this mantra and benefit from it. So that means we need to learn to move through the world. The Bhagavad-Gita is going to go on and on about how the yogi has to be, whether it's hot or cold, whether people are being, you know, I was just thinking, you were just saying like, you know, you get it, you put yourself in front of an audience of a couple million people, you get, you know, you're getting a lot of people saying, hey man, that was great. But you're also getting people saying, man, who is this idiot? And he doesn't know anything that he's talking about. And, you know, and the yogi learns to be like, it doesn't matter whether people are praising me. It doesn't matter whether people are despising me and saying horrible things about me, because I'm not dependent on anything external for my happiness, for my validation, for my happiness. I know that it's something that's within. Then I become unchanged or unmoved and undistracted by the externals of the world. And then I have the ability to absorb my mind in that transcendental sound, and the transformation takes place. I transform.
It's, by the way, it is such a good practice of yoga, throwing yourself out there like that, because you will get such full spectrum love and criticism and praise and deep appreciation, and you changed my life and I'd love to kick your ass. It's all going to come. And I can see myself like riding these waves of like, oh, I'm cool. Oh, he wants to kick my ass. Oh, he thinks I'm old and losing my teeth. And oh, and just like, it goes on. And to the degree that I'm affected by external validation, I enjoy and I suffer. And in Bhakti, we're saying you got to be in the most simple facets of yoga, like holding warrior two, you got to be steady and breathe. But in the biggest picture of yoga is, what am I doing in this world as my offering to divinity? What is my contribution? And can I go forward despite praise, criticism, loss, gain, you know, great weather. I live in this beautiful place where I'm doing it. I'm living in this horrible place where I'm doing it. Great success, financial reward, or I'm practically making nothing for what I'm doing. Can I just do it for the sake of this is my offering? And so it's really sort of a micro and a macro thing here, like the Fibonacci spiral of
you know, I'd take that one more level micro.
Please.
Because you described how, okay, whether people are praising me or despising me, will I still do my offering? Will I still make my contribution? And I would say even still more, whether I'm being praised or criticized, internally, not you're describing something external. Like I won't be discouraged from doing what I'm supposed to do, making my offering. And then, and the Bhagavad-Gita will say still further, internally, can you be unchanged? Right? That I'm not even upset or disturbed. My mind remains exactly the same, even when you're saying you want to kick my ass, you know, on YouTube comments or whatever like that, right? That like my mind stays the same because my conviction is so strong, it's so deep, and my experience is rising, that I find happiness within. So I'm unchanged, and that even-mindedness in Bhagavad Gita is called samatvam. And Krishna will say, samatvam yoga uchate, text 248 in the Gita, right? It's such even-mindedness is called yoga. That's what yoga is. So people that practice yoga, a lot of people are practicing yoga and they want to know, how does it get spiritual? Or they want to practice yoga off the mat. This is where Gita says you can start right here. Practice being even-minded amongst all external circumstances. You know, whether it's hot or cold is one thing, and it becomes even more challenging when it's like whether people are saying nice things or treating you nicely, or whether they're saying cruel things or you know, to you or about you. I practice being even-minded, and that even-mindedness will open up the door to absorption in these transcendental sounds and these transcendental practices, and they'll penetrate and transform one.
You know, it's a really great lesson and challenge for me too. Because when it gets bigger on a bigger scale, it becomes a little bit more intense.
Yeah.
Like there's lots of people. It's one thing if you're like, yeah, this guy at work thinks I'm a jerk. It's another thing of like, oh wow, 4,000 people want to kick my ass.
Give me a thumbs down.
4,000 people are giving thumbs down. Like, who is this idiot? And it becomes like you start self-doubting everything about yourself. All your self-loathing stuff comes to the surface. It can really send you down and I think there is a healthiness of self-criticism and not living in your praise. But the whole, I can see how people afflicted by the energy of fame, they can ruin their lives quick because you could spiral out of control. It can spiral out of control because you're desperate for the validation, and you're living between fear and your own ego, and you're going back and forth, and it's like intoxicating. You can lose your mind. All you want to do is take a drug to get out of it. I promise I won't be on drugs tomorrow.
Well, speaking of that kind of, that kind of anxiety, check out the next verse, Raghu. This is a big one right here.
Okay. We're on 34.
Yeah.
Okay. 34. It is personally experienced by me that those who are always full of cares and anxieties due to desiring contact of the senses with their objects can cross the ocean of nescience on a most suitable boat. The constant chanting of the transcendental activities of the personality of Godhead. Let me read that again.
Okay.
It is personally experienced by me that those who are always full of cares and anxieties due to desiring contact of the senses with their objects. That means people are just like looking at the material world as, how can I enjoy that? What can I get out of this? How can I extract some juice out of that? So for all those people, they can cross the ocean of nescience. Nescience means of complete ignorance, on a most suitable boat. And what is that boat? The constant chanting of the transcendental activities of the personality of Godhead.
Yeah. So there's a fundamental misconception that my happiness is derived through external things.
I have to go out to get joy. Yeah. I have to go out there. I have to go on this exotic trip there.
Bring something through my senses.
By the way, I'm taking a group of people to Greece this summer. We're going to go out to go in. Okay, go on.
But the idea that something external to me I need to bring in through my senses, through my eyes, through my ears, through my mouth, through my tactile senses, and through that I'll find happiness. It's saying here that strategy, the result will be anxiety. But he's saying that it's my personal experience that even if that is our issue, that there's a way past that. And that's through connecting with this transcendental sound, which is a spiritual energy. And then as we've been saying, that finding this even-mindedness or this peace, that's one thing. Like I was just speaking about even-mindedness, but the Bhakti yogis understand that even-mindedness under all different external circumstances, that peace that one gets from that's not the end in itself. That's the platform from which you can begin to deeply absorb yourself in spiritual stuff, in the spiritual content that is so satisfying and transforming. And this verse speaks to that, text 35.
This is, sorry about that. It is true that by practicing restraint of the senses by the yoga system, one can get relief from the disturbance of the desire and lust. But this is not sufficient to give satisfaction of the soul. For this satisfaction is derived from bhakti, or devotional service to the personality of Godhead. So here is the nuance here. It's not just, okay, I control my senses, I control my mind, I control my, all the tuggings. You get tuggings of your tongue, belly, and genitals. And saying, okay, it's not just the control of those tuggings. You'll get some shanti or some peace, but it's actually by this active engagement and connection with divinity. And how do we do that? We do it through sound, through transcendental sound. That and sound includes stories, etc., like that. And it does something to the spirit. It makes us feel connection. It connects us to our real world. These stories aren't our fantasy world. They're our actual real world. This is the fantasy world. And so we say, well, no, it's not. Get real. Nothing's real here. Everything is temporary. Everything is temporary. I think that is beauty. It's not beauty. That beauty is skin deep, right? I think that exotic thing will make me happy. How many times have you planned an exotic trip and it's just like, it wasn't as good? You plan a party and it wasn't as good as you thought it would be. The material world is filled with dead ends, illusions, potholes, massive potholes. I did everything right and it was wrong. This is the you can't get real here. This is a temporary world. It's like trying to move into a sandcastle. Here's our new home, honey. We're here. Really? The tide's coming in? Really? You like your new kitchen? Is it made of sand? Anyway, sorry.
So in any case, no, but your point is really well taken. And just this idea that we hear about yoga, we hear about the peace that one can get from it, but try to understand that peace is just the platform which is from which one can open the door to true spiritual experience. And that's what the peace is for, so that your mind won't be distracted, that you can achieve the state of absorption like Narada is describing here. That when I connect with the transcendental sound, I feel a divine connection right in the heart. I'm transformed, that I'm free of anxiety, that I'm free to travel. I just found complete freedom through it. So the peace is nice, but it's not the end. The peace is just the platform from which one goes deeper. Here he uses it. He says that finding this practicing restraint of the senses by yoga and becoming even-minded, one can get relief from the disturbances of desire and lust. And that's a yogic goal. But that is not sufficient. Okay, that's just the platform from which we're going to start to do our real work now. That is not sufficient to give.
Pretty cool. That's like the threshold or the doorway or the
there you go.
front porch.
Yeah, and then he refers to give satisfaction to the soul. That's where the Bhagavatam began, with the sages in the forest saying, "How do we find complete satisfaction of the soul?" He says, "For this satisfaction is derived from bhakti, from this divine love, ultimately." From losing all interest in enjoying the material things of this world, or even escaping the pains of this world, that there's a higher level of consciousness that yoga is meant to bring us to. And that peace and even-mindedness is the platform on which we can do the real work and real transformation to get there.
Kaustubha, DT asked a good question. I don't think we'll have time to get into it. Maybe she could copy it for tomorrow. She said, Prabhuji, I have followed up on an airplane. I have a follow-up on the airplane analogy. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Please correct me if I'm wrong. You said destination is like our destiny. And what you do on the plane, that's your free will.
Yeah.
So the idea is we were going to Denver, Colorado on the plane. That's our karma. Can't get off that plane. What you do on that plane, that's your free will.
Okay.
With Bhakti, can we intentionally change the destination as well?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's okay. I'm just going to read it and then we can address it tomorrow. Should we even try changing the destination? I'm trying to understand, what is my ultimate prayer? It's a good entry level for tomorrow.
Great question at DTG. Let's pick that up tomorrow.
Okay. Hey.
And there's the music.
And there's our music. Anyway, those who've been listening to Apple Podcasts, or if you're new to the show, welcome. We do this pretty much every morning at 5 a.m. We started late today, but you're always welcome here. It's only 1 hour a day, and it's that daily commitment to the Bhagavatam. It starts just to change the trajectory of our choices, how we move in this world. And that's why we're all strangely addicted to this thing. Thanks, everybody. Everybody listening on Zoom, thank you. We had a big group today. That's 78, not bad. And thanks for all your questions. And I really want to thank everybody for their encouragement with everything went on with Joe Rogan. And
well done, Raghu. Well done.
You're kind, all of you.
Hey,
thanks
5 a.m.
at Boston
tomorrow?
Yoga Union for allowing us to do this here, and our guests here. Jai Shri Krishna Bolo Jai Radhe.
Raghu, is it 5 a.m. tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow we're back on at 5 a.m.
Eastern time.
Jai Shri Krishna Bolo Jai Radhe 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 Shri Radhe.